were Dodgers. And Dad started telling me about Pee Wee Reese and Bill Hodges, Carl Furillo, number 6, Roy Campanella and Jackie Robinson. And he said, tomorrow we should see these players. So I ran to bed, which you don't usually see happen with our kids. You usually have to prod them. And we woke up in the morning, we got the bus, and it was very similar to one of these buses here. Maybe a little newer, but not too much. And we drove to the tarmac of Tampa Airport about 8:15 in the morning. And we got off the bus, and I said, Dad, where should we stand? He said, well, let's stand in the front so we could see the guys getting on. So I said, okay. So we waited a few minutes, and all of a sudden, in the distance, a DC-7 prop jet, the K. O'Malley 1. The Dodgers were the only team to have their own plane. Had it banked into the early morning fog and mist there, landed and came in front of me and had Dodgers on the side, the baseball on the tail. Pretty heady stuff for a young kid. And it taxied over. There were no concourses back then in '56. They pushed stairs up to the door of the plane. It opened up, and off came Walt Alston, the great manager. And there was Peavy, the captain, and Charlie Neal and Jim Gilliam, and the boys of summer. They had beaten the Yankees, as they just said, in 1955, the fall. So this was their spring as world champions. And in the book, Candace and I talked about, she said to me, what happened when they walked by? I said, well, first of all, they patted me on the head, because remember the old days, you had a flat top and you had so much butch wax it was sticking up like a porcupine? I guess they couldn't believe it was sticking up so straight, and I had to test it a little bit like that. The moral of this is my dad was about 6'3" or 6'4", and I'm not. So don't pat your kids on the head when they're young. It will affect the cerebellum or something like that. Shawnee, I'm not going to pat you on the head, my son. But it was as if my Topps cards came to life as each one of those players walked by. And to see the players here, to know that in somehow, some way, that this period of time, from 45 to 58, when the Dodgers made the transition to Los Angeles, may have been the golden era for them. Ralph Branca, dear friend. I'm going to see him in about 2 weeks in New York. He's the last living member of that 1947 team. Eddie Stanky, really a peppery Southerner. Branca, Bobby Bragan, the same way. But that day, once the players got on the bus, we went to St. Petersburg. We started getting off the bus. Guys were grabbing their bags. Little man comes out in boxer shorts and a strapped T-shirt with a little cigar. I wonder who this is. He says, I'm John, the clubhouse man. Bussy, that's your boy? And my dad said, yes, it is. Want a bat boy today? And my dad looked at me and I smiled. And, yes, he said, well, get the kid and have him take the bats out to the dugout. Guys will be out in 15 minutes. So the bat bag was bigger than me. The ball bag was probably weighed more than me. Dad helped me take it out to the dugout. I was an only child. And I started laying out the bats. I don't know how many of you are only children. Very pragmatic with it. Laying the helmets out just right. And I kept hearing tsh, tsh. And I turned around. Of course, the Yankees were taking batting practice, and there was number 7, Mickey Mantle, in the batting cage. And of course, every kid at that time loved Mickey. You love the Dodgers, but you also love Mickey. And he had these towering shots, Steve, to right field and over. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and all of a sudden I hear, son, you want to play catch? And I turn around, there's Gil Hodges, number 14. And Gil, and I did an interview today, Gil was my first idol because Gil was about 6'3", 6'4", soft-spoken, big hands, a real man's man, and a lot like my dad. So I said, yes, sir. And at that time, real good gloves cost about $12, right? And your mother told you, don't lose them, because we can't afford another one. So you put it on your belt. So I was undoing my belt buckle and trying to get my glove off, and all of a sudden I got it off, and the first toss was a little rainbow to me. And I thought, gee, he doesn't think I can catch. And I tossed it back to him, and then it was a little harder, and then all of a sudden I heard, tsh, and I looked again, and boom, boom, hit me right in the chest. And Mr. Hodges came running over. You okay, son? I said, yes, sir, I'm sorry. You know, Mr. Hodges, I was looking the other way. He said, you know what? I was peeking at him too, son. I was peeking at him too. And that day was, and we say this in the book, that day was my baptism to baseball. 2 weeks later, I'd start my first Little League game. Dad and 6 other men in Tampa started the second Little League, and I would begin playing. But I had started by collecting my baseball cards. And being a bat boy that day, I fell in love with it. And it was all those things that you heard in little ways tonight. The cut grass. I mean, all of you that have played baseball, and almost everybody has in some shape or form. If you've ever been on a field that they just cut the grass, it's one of the smells of baseball. And I remember that day looking down at my brand new tennis shoes and seeing all this white stuff on them, which was rosin, when they marked the field with rosin. And I remember distinctly having my hands be sticky most of the day. And that was from that rag that was on the on-deck circle of pine tar. So that day, of course, it was a day in which it was my baptism. But also during that day, I was sitting on the bench, and I was sitting next to Pee Wee Reese and Gil Hodges, and they were talking about the Yankee pitcher and how he was holding the ball. This way was a curve, that way was a fastball. And I didn't really understand at that age, at 7, what they were talking about. But I knew they were studying the pitcher and the game, and they wouldn't be playing the Yankees, hopefully until September in the World Series. But they were going to be prepared when they faced him in September, because they loved the game. They had a passion for it. They studied it. And I'm listening to him, and all of a sudden I feel this presence, and this person almost sits on top of me, and I look up, and it was 42. Jackie Robinson. And I said, oh, excuse me, sir. Excuse me. So, okay, son. He says, yeah, I'll move over. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I'm busy right now, and I'll get to you in a minute. But I always say it would have been so much of an honor to have him completely sit on top of me like that. You know, he and I together, Jackie. But he was a man of, and as you can see in this movie, I think they did a wonderful job in depicting Jackie in the beginning of his career. As time went on, he only played about 10 years. He only played until 56. But you can imagine the escalation of his maturity and the suppression of what he wanted to do as opposed to what he needed to do. And I always say, and I'm fortunate to be able to do a lot of speaking, that not only was he the first black man in baseball, and Campanella would come and other black men, Larry Doby, the first one in the American League, but he probably influenced our society more than any one person during that era of our lives. Because as you know, after that, it was the segregation battles, and it was Alabama and all these things that started to turn the tide. And I saw him his last year, and he was graying, and I could listen to him talk, and everybody held him in reverence. Could have played with him for 10 years, but when Jackie spoke, you listened. And it's ironic. I mean, we have a daughter that lives in Brooklyn. And those brownstones in Brooklyn are just the same as they were back in 1940 and 1950, at a time when all those players, almost all those players, some went back home to the South, but almost all those players stayed in Brooklyn. They had second jobs in the off-season. None of the players have second jobs in the off-season. They hire people in the off-season. And they stayed together as a team and as a unit. It was a different time. It was a different place. I was so blessed to grow up, and I did this for 7 or 8 years as a bat boy. The Dodgers loved my dad, and they asked for him, and I would spring training with him until I got to high school, and I got busy then. Through the transition to Los Angeles, I know many of you are from the LA area. Remember the Dodgers playing in the Coliseum, and then in 1962, the Cathedral of Baseball, Dodger Stadium, was built. But the Dodgers have always had such a strong influence in my life. And to know that now this movie, has anybody ever seen the original Jackie Robinson story? Wasn't it charming?
Who was that guy who played Jackie Robinson?
Who was that guy? I mean, Jackie played himself.
Yes.
Yeah. And
he was very good.
Black and white Charlie, he did a great job. But I think they did a wonderful job with this movie. And wasn't it nice tonight to see a movie where there was no nudity, there was no real cussing. 1,000 people weren't killed by monsters and digital laser, those things. Some of the critics I read in the paper today, Turner in Los Angeles and Morgenstern for the Wall Street Journal, gave it a thumbs up. You know, they wanted to criticize it because of its simplicity. But it was refreshing tonight. It'll be refreshing when we all see it again, because we'll want to, and we tell other people. Because it was a time and place that changed our society. So I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and we go to questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've got a couple. I thought up some questions for this. Yeah.
You're pretty smart. Do you do radio?
A little.
Yeah.
It's debatable.
The voice of Los Angeles, the consciousness of Los Angeles.
So how did they do it capturing the baseball and the time and the period from your perspective?
How'd they do it?
Yeah, how did they do a good job of it? Like how because these are all real people to us, right? Ralph Branca's a real person, Pee Wee Reese. How did they do?
I think they did well. The only person that I don't think was captured was Red Barber. Red had this really southern drawl to him. But a quick story, he was so influential in the radio world, and obviously a Hall of Famer eventually. When TV first came about in the early 50s, Red decided that he knew the game quite well. And there had to be a way that there could be more than one camera angle. So he had the staff build I think it was a 3x3 square board that had lights on it. And it was first, second, third, home, pitcher, left field, right field, center field. And it was wired to go to the director in the truck. And of course it was black and white and it was simple. And there were really only 2 cameras at the time. But what Red would do as he was announcing, he would push a button and the camera would switch to first base maybe. And he would push another button that would go over to third base. And maybe he'd push another one for the pitcher because he wanted them to zoom in on the pitcher. So he essentially created being a real sports director while he called a radio game. So it's a little known thing. They told me about it. And of course, the great Vin Scully came along in 1952. And of course, we cherish him. He learned from Red Barber. We always learn from somebody. I learned from Hodges and Reese and those players about how to play the game. Vin Scully was a disciple of Red Barber.
You can actually, I thought, John C. McGinley played Red Barber in this movie, but you could hear sort of the origin of Vin Scully a little bit in his cadence and in his patter.
Sure.
I thought, yeah, that was an interesting part. Ralph Branca, of course, every time I hear the name Ralph Branca, I think of
1951. Bobby Thompson. When they showed Ebbets Field from home plate, you could see left center. That's where Bobby Thompson hit the infamous home run against Ralph Branca to win the National League pennant.
Yeah. Ralph Branca.
But the buses, they got the retro buses. They must have got them from Dodgertown because I could have swore I've ridden in those buses during spring training back in the late '60s. There, the wool uniforms. And everybody has always said, oh, those wool uniforms must have been really hot, you know. And I said, no, double-knit uniforms that are tightly bound around your skin, those are hot uniforms. At least the wool, as you could see, was big on them, and the perspiration was allowed to dry. So they dug deep into the archives to find the typewriter that the writer used, right? They would spell check back then. Can you imagine that? What if he misspelled a word? Back again. Here we go. Another sheet.
Yeah. When you think about that, I mean, what are the odds that you would be a bat boy for that Dodger team, and then a couple of years later, you'd be one of the great Dodgers of all time? You couldn't have even dreamt that up, could you?
It happened. You know, I've always said it's almost like a Hollywood script. Because 12 years after that first day at Michigan State University, I was drafted in the first round by the Dodgers. And And a quick story, and I know Candace has heard this many times, but I'm waiting at home. It's draft day. Played 2 years at Michigan State. Just had a great spring. Knew I was probably going to go pretty high on the draft. There was only one draft. I mean, there was no ESPN 3 weeks leading up analysis. You guys, who's going to be in the first round? This kid happened. So Dad takes the day off. He had the gray flu. The blue flu is for police. The gray flu is for Greyhound bus driver. Mom was a insurance secretary. She was off. The draft started at noon in New York, and we waited for the phone to ring, and the first hour goes, and the second hour, and you're trying to stay busy, because this is the most important time in a family's life. And we started talking, well, maybe they're going after pitchers this year. There's a lot of good pitchers around the country, and maybe go in the second or third round. 2:30 comes, 3:30, 3 o'clock, and then you start to rationalize, well, why not go back to Michigan State? Playing football for Duffy Daugherty, love baseball there, love the Four Seasons, hot and everything in Florida, that's okay, go back again. And now Mom's going to start to make dinner, and Dad's thinking about other things, and I'm walking around, all of a sudden the phone rings. It's about 3:45. And Dad goes into the bedroom, was in the bedroom, and we had one phone, rhoda dial. And he says, yes, and oh, hi, Mr. Wellman. Well, Guy Wellman was the Midwest regional scout for the Dodgers, signed many great players, but he had been my scout in the Midwest. And my dad goes, oh, that's great. We're so excited. Gosh, what took you so long? and Guy, who's a wonderful man, I hope Steve's met him, he said, well, Joe, we were having this great draft. Well, in this draft was Ron Say, Davey Lopes, Bill Russell, Bobby Valentine, Bill Buckner, Tom Bashore. Arguably the greatest draft in baseball history. 9 of the guys in the draft, in this one draft, played over 8 years in the major leagues. So Dad says, oh, sure, tomorrow, Guy, yeah, we'll pick you up. So Dad comes in, and we're all waiting, Mom and I, what's going on? Mr. Wellman's coming in tomorrow, and he says he wants to sign Stevie to a contract. Great. He's flying in about 4 o'clock. Steve, you and I'll pick him up. Millie, put out the biggest spread we've had in a long time here, and we're going to fatten him up for the kill. So we pick him up at the airport, and what a gentleman. And we get home, and Mom's got stuffed pork chops and fish and steak. It wasn't an entree she didn't have that he could possibly like. Apple pie, lemon meringue pie. Right? Little problem with lemon meringue pie, the parakeet got out, made a landing, walked across it, which paid off for me. Nobody ate it but me at that time. So we sit down to dinner, and many of you, in the world of business, or even in life, we negotiate, right? Well, Guy does this for a living, signs great players every year. So he talks for an hour, or lets us talk for an hour and a half, asks us a question. Do you go to church? Yes, we're Catholic. Where do you vacation? Oh, we go down the southeast of Florida. Stevie, what do you like to do when you're not playing? Oh, this and that. And then finally, about an hour and a half later, he says, well, guys, let's go in the living room. We're going to make you a Dodger. So as women, what do? Guys, you go ahead. I'll take care of the dishes. And okay, so we go into the living room, and we sit on our wonderful furniture that's covered with plastic. Remember those days? How many people put plastic on your couch, right? You only used it 3 times a year. Birthdays, anniversary, Christmas, and so forth. Lasted forever, right? And Guy says, okay, we're going to get to it. Al Campanis, the GM, really likes Steve. Got great power. We want to offer you $12,000. So I look at Dad. Dad looks at me. Now, Dad's the greatest Greyhound bus driver ever, but doesn't really negotiate. But had kind of asked around a little and found out the first round draft choices the year before got $25,000.
Wow.
Wow, that's a long time ago, isn't it? Bryce Harper 2 years ago got $9.9 million in the first round. So Dad looks at Guy and he said, well, Guy, Stevie's got some power. You don't have much power in LA, and I think he's probably worth more than that. So Guy talks for a minute, and he looks at Dad, and he said, Joe, how about $18,000? Now, under the circumstances, we would have paid them, right? Dodgers bat boy. Guy, if he would have said, we don't have any money, okay, we'll pay you. What are you, 1,000? So my dad, for whatever reason, kind of paused, and I'm going, Dad, he goes, Guy, you know, I just think he's worth more than that. So now Guy says, well, fellas, I'm only authorized to go to 18. If I can use your phone, I'll call L.A., Al Campanas, I'll see what he has to say, but I'm only authorized. Great. Dad takes Guy into the bedroom again, little black phone, rotator, no hold buttons. Right? To this day, we don't know if he ever called Los Angeles or not. And he comes back in 10 minutes and he says, I've never had this happen, but Al Campanas really loves you because he played football at Fordham and baseball, and he likes two-way players. And he was able to take some money from another buddy. You heard that before? But this is it. $25,000. I look at Dad. He looks at me. Dad starts to turn around. When Millie Garvey, remember Millie, cleaning off the table, doing the dishes, sticks her head around the corner and says, Guy, yeah, Millie, you know what? Yeah, I'll give Stevie 25 to stay at Michigan State. I don't think it's enough. I look at Dad. Oh, my Lord, what has she done? She's ruined it. Now we're stuck to the plastic. Right? I mean, we're stuck on that plastic like suction cups. It's over, that's it. Okay, what do you do as a negotiator? You're a savvy negotiator. What do you do? Well, first of all, you realize you've been talking to the wrong people. You realize I've been wasting my time with these two guys. So he gets up, we're looking at him, goes into the kitchen, and all we can hear is, now Millie. Well, come to find out, he picked up the towel and he started drying the dishes. So we're stuck there, and 5 minutes, 2 minutes more, and all of a sudden, they come around the corner, arm in arm. Really? Guy says, well, we got a deal, boys. Yep, Millie and I have talked it over. We're going to give you $40,000, a new car, and the rest of your education. So all the gentlemen in the audience who understand that we are on this earth just to serve and that the women are better negotiators, raise your hand. Come on. We're talking job security here. Let those arms up if you can. And he did. She got me $40,000, and just quickly we sat down. He said, a couple places we could send you, Daytona Beach. We have a team there. He said, but I know you played in Florida. It's humid. The ball doesn't carry. Or we can send you to Ogden, Utah. That's 5,000 feet up in the mountains, and the ball carries pretty well. And we got a guy there who's quite a character, and name is Lasorda. And he said, we're going to send Valentine and Buckner and Peshore up there because we think you guys are a little older. And the next day I took a flight and landed and walked into the Ben Lomond Hotel on Main Street. And you know how when it's bright out, your eyes take a minute to adjust, and I'm walking in, there's this guy that's laughing, and guys my age are in interaction, and all of a sudden, as I'm coming in, this fella turns around and walks towards me, and he says, you must be the guard. Yeah. Who is this guy? My name's Tom Lasorda, and your life's changed forever, son. And, oh my Lord, I've dreamed of this. Yeah. But for the next 10 days, Pioneer League, 10 days of practice to start the season, 77 games, called Short Season A. My son Ryan, who signed with the Rockies last June, played in the Pioneer League. And his first game was against the Ogden Dodgers. You know, something about life and God's divinity there. But Lasorda taught us about the front of the jersey, the Dodgers, how you play the game, how you treat the fans. And he used to always say, he said, it's not about the back of the jersey, it's about the front of the jersey. So that was my beginning. All right,
questions for Steve Garvey? Yes, right here.
From a different angle, is it true that you played the 36 game against Notre Dame out of the region?
Yes, absolutely. It's the 1966 game, Notre Dame and Michigan State. Yeah. I was a freshman. Freshmen only played 2 games at that time. This is going way back. But that week, because I had been a kind of an option rollout quarterback in Florida, I played Terry Hanratty. And they just beat the heck out of me for 5 days that week. And eventually that game, the first of the game of the century, the hardest hitting game I ever saw, 11 All-Americans on the field at any one time. And it ended up as 10-10. Hanratty got knocked out of the game. Nick Eddy, the tailback, they took a train to East Lansing, and he went to get off, and he slipped, grabbed the railing, and pulled his shoulder out of socket. But I stood on the sideline beaten up and knew that at least I had made some contribution that day, somehow, some way. But thanks for reminding me. Also played the next year, third game of the year, SC came to Michigan State. And by that time, I was a defensive back, a cornerback, and on the Monday of that week, they give you a scouting report, and my scouting report was on the receivers, and I got to the last one, and it was 3 paragraphs long. Normally, it's just a paragraph. And this guy who had initials for a first name, OJ something or other, just happened to be one of the guys I was going to have to cover. It listed him as an Olympic sprinter, 6'3", 210, 215. And that you should pray a lot that week. That God will give you the strength and the passion to try to tackle somebody like that. And it was a great game, 21-17. It's probably the second best game I'd ever seen. I was in that one.
Let's see. Yes, right over here. The question is, how long did Steve play? How long did Steve Garvey play?
I played almost 19 years in the major leagues. Very blessed, very fortunate. I played from 1968 when I first signed, professionally till 1988, and it was a great time to play. During that time, the business started to change with free agency at the end of the 70s, and by the time I retired, you started to see the emergence of cable television, which has been the single greatest influence on the economy of the game. And unfortunately, it was the beginning of steroids, too, at the end. So I was blessed to play that long.
Back in the day, they kept teams together.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about those Dodger teams, and you think about you and Bill Russell and Ron Say, and I mean, and now teams, it's hard to keep a team together. Yeah. And so there's not that same continuity. That's, you guys, probably the last great infield that will ever be kept intact for really a whole career, right?
Oh, I think so. Of course, Say and Russell and Lopes and myself, I was the last piece of that infield. June 23rd, 1973. I had been a guy without a position. I had been a wild arm third baseman, not a big demand for those in the major league. And I started pinch hitting. I was the 24th really player on that team early in the year, and started pitch hitting and did some hits and working my way to the last pinch hitter of the game. And we were struggling against left-handed pitching in the first game of a doubleheader on that June 23rd, and got a hit in the 8th. One of only 2 hits against Freddie Norman. And I'm sitting there with my little turkey sandwich between games, and Walter Alston, the great manager, walks by, and he stops, and he looks at me, and he says, "You ever play first base?" And without hesitation, I said, "Oh, yeah, Skipper." Well, I had played 1 game with a bad hamstring in AAA, and 1 game in Little League, because everybody wanted to use that first base mitt. Remember that? That and the catcher's mitt. You always wanted to. So I played 2 games. He said, "Well, get a mitt. You're going to play first base this game. We need some hits. So I borrowed somebody's glove, went out and grabbed a bat boy, and told him to toss me the ball and throw a couple on the ground. And went out that night and got a couple of doubles, and we won the game. And after the game, I'm sitting there, and Walt comes by and he says, "Kid, you're in there tomorrow."
And that was the beginning of the infield being together for 8.5 years.
Wow.
Arguably, thank you, arguably the greatest infield in history because of not only that longevity, but durability, dependability, individual success. Each guy had certain skills. And then 4 of those years we went to World Series. The Reds and Dodgers, remember that great rivalry? Such a great rivalry. The 8 of 10 years, one of us went to a World Series. But it was a time when you could keep a team together. God bless America. The business changed, and there are more options now. And the general manager that can keep 3 or 4 guys together for 4 or 5 years is going to be successful. But the most important thing is really to continue to try to have that passion for the game and make sure it's our national pastime.
Yes, right here. Yeah.
Have you ever considered being a manager or a coach in the Major League?
The question is, has Steve ever considered managing in the big leagues?
Well, I always thought it would be fun at least to try it for a year, autonomously. Don't bother me. Give me a team, let me manage. And then I thought about it for a while, and I said, I'd rather own. Better job security. So 2.5 years ago, when you started seeing the problems in Los Angeles, put a group together with Earl Hershiser and some other wonderful gentlemen and ladies, and we came close. We raised $1.4 billion.
Wow.
And came up $700 million short.
This much.
And I wish the commissioner would have said, you know what, just keep the money. Unfortunately, we had to give it back. But the Guggenheim partners were very aggressive. 2 large hedge funds. And to their credit, they won the bidding. And very impressed with what they're doing, their commitment. It's going to be a new millennium for the Dodgers, new direction. It does take more money now. It does take money to put back into the infrastructure of the team in the minor leagues and international department and on the field. I did an interview today. How can they spend $220 million on payroll this year? Because they can, right? And they want that team to be competitive now, not to wait 2 or 3 years from now. And Magic Johnson said something. He's really a public face about 3 weeks ago, I guess, in spring training. He said, you know what? Nobody said this, but we expect to win the World Championship. Finally, somebody said, you're right. Finally, somebody said there, we expect to win the World Championship. Because if you don't expect to be the best, you probably won't. If you don't expect to win a World Championship, you're probably going to end up with a lot of excuses. So I think this is where this team's getting to under new management and ownership, instilling that, like we did back in the 70s, our teams, every year, spring training, we're going to win the World Championship. And if we fell short, we looked what we needed, Campanis and the staff went out and got it, and we came back, and you know what? We were in the World Series. And we won that World Championship against the dreaded Yankees. Remember the dreaded Yankees in '81? So I think the team's in good hands now, and it's time for everybody to come back and watch them on TV and bring them back again.
Now, I think we're probably mostly Dodger fans here. Are we mostly Dodger fans? So, since we have Steve Garvey here, did everybody see the game? Did you see what happened last night?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cheap shot.
So
You're looking at me for...
yeah, I'm
analysis.
Yeah, well, we've got somebody who played the game here.
been hit before.
Yes, been hit. So Zach Greinke gets he hits Carlos Quentin. Quentin charges the mound. What do you think of the way each guy behaved, and does that make any sense?
Well, I think the most important thing is that we didn't realize until as time went on, and everybody did the homework, there had been a prior history. And in a sport where batters have little respect for pitchers in the first place, because if you think about it, pitchers work once a week,
They do a majority of the commercials. They have low handicaps. They take their clubs on the road. And they want to get paid the same as position players, like first baseman and third baseman. So, with that said, he had been hit a couple times prior by Greinke. Did the situation dictate it? Not necessarily. Does Greinke have pretty good control? Absolutely. What happened? Was it a little retaliation to Kemp having a ball sail over his head? Maybe. But I do know this, that sometimes there are little reasons, and when you get hit, and all of us guys, we got testosterone, you challenge us and we're going to react. I honestly thought when he took the first couple of steps, now most fights happen this way. The batter takes a couple steps, he's waiting for the catcher to grab him, they kind of roll around, right? Because every baseball fight you've ever seen has been a bad fight, right? Somebody gets stepped on.
No, punches get thrown.
Oh, everybody. The only good one was Ventura and Nolan Ryan. Remember when Nolan was punching him with his pitching hand. But then testosterone kicks in, this macho preservation, I'm going to show you, and he pulled the trigger and went after him. Now, why Greinke thought he was O.J. Simpson and decided to go into him against this 240-pound bull of a middle linebacker, we'll never know. But ultimately what happened, especially after the collision and he went back, you knew that this wasn't going to be good for him. He ended up with a fractured collarbone, and he'll be out for 8 months now. If we were all owners today, it'd be a sad day for us. Because you're going to lose a pitcher who arguably could be your ace if you didn't have Kershaw. For probably a third of his pitching time this season. And although they never say it, and I wouldn't say it publicly, but that's $8 million down the drain. Yeah. So now they've got to have everybody step up. And I tweeted, I'm a tweeter now. How many people? Everybody tweets? Yeah. Wonderful wife.
What's your Twitter handle?
Steve Garvey 6.
Nice.
Really
there are
difficult.
5 others.
Really difficult.
Oh, right.
But we started hunting 3 or 4 months ago, and I got 5,000 followers now. But I tweeted, now's the time. Look at the Yankees. 5 key players are down. They need to rally. They need to come together. They need to do all the little things in order to win until they get the guys back. Dodgers, the same thing now. They got to start doing the small things. Can't rely on the big ball. Ramirez is gone. Greinke's gone. They have to go back to playing Dodger baseball again. And leadership has to step up on the field. And let's see if it does. If it does, they'll hold the fort until the guys get back, and I think they'll be deep into the postseason. Another question? Yes?
I was wondering, do you think that a movie like this, which kind of harkens back to the baseball true history, can help current fans kind of fall in love with the game again after the steroid era really started?
Oh, absolutely. My favorite movie is The Natural. I mean, we watch it once a month whether we need it or not. I mean, remember Glenn Close standing up and that halo she had, I bought Candace a hat like that. And every Thursday she stands right by this light. But if you think he hits the home run, he hits the light tower and the lights explode and he's walking the bases and things are coming. It doesn't get any better than that, does it? But it's about, the great thing about baseball is the semantics of it. A lot of the stuff that were in this movie today, the simplicity of it, a different time, a different place. Many of us being born about that time, a little earlier, a little later, remember that when it does harken back to a simpler time, that to understand the history of the game, you understand the history of our country and our society at that point. And if we understand history, we have a better sense of where it's been baseball, where it's been, where it is now, and where it's going. And I think we need movies, more movies like this for sure.
One of the things I wanted to mention is tonight, a portion of the proceeds from every single ticket sold are being donated to the UCLA Urology Research Center. And you may or may not know that Steve has been battling cancer. I guess, how are you? How are
How's
you
the battle
doing?
going?
How's the battle?
Well, I am a prostate cancer survivor. Thank you. As you know, cancer is non-discriminating, many times a silent killer. I've been taking a PSA test, and I want all you men to listen to me, for the last 10, 12 years. My dad had a radical prostatectomy at 64 over in Murrieta. We went through that with him, and he lived another 20 years to be 84. But he caught it early because he took his PSA test. Last spring, I took my annual one. PSA was elevated. Decided to take it 6 months or 3 months later. My doctor, Svetlana Rabakovich, said, we're going to stay on top of this. It was elevated a little more. I'm on the board of neurosurgery at UCLA, so we called the urology department there and asked to talk to the chairman, and it was Dr. Mark Lippman, who's a wonderful man and leader there. He had us in. He said, let's take it step by step. I did a biopsy. There's a Gleason score that determines your cancer and the degree of it, and mine was on a scale of 1 to 10, 6 and 7. So 2 days after the test, he sat down with Candace and I, and he said, we have to do something about it. And these are our options: radiation, seeding, chemotherapy. We can monitor it, or we can do a radical prostatectomy and take it out. And Candace and I looked at each other, and as many of you husbands and wives and significant others live life together, we looked at each other, and we've always been aggressive. We haven't looked away at challenges in our life. And I turned around, I asked the doctor, I think all of us at some time ask our doctors, what would you do? Right? We want to know. Because if we have our life in his or her hands, we want to know if they're confident in what they're doing, right? He said, let's take it out. He said, you can do it robotically or I can do it. And he paused and he looked at me and he said, but you know what? He said, I think I'm at the top of my game. Let me do it. Now, from an athlete standpoint, or really any of it, when your doctor says, I'm at the top of my game, I want to do it, you're thinking, okay, right? I like this confidence right here. Let's go. Let's get the gurney and get this thing open. But we had it done the end of October. Went through the recuperation. Candace and I have always had this feeling that we're on this earth to serve and make a difference. And maybe when God throws you a curve, it's for a reason. Took a PSA test a month ago because after the operation, Dr. Litwin came in and he said, I think it's self-contained. I don't think it's in the lymph nodes. Let's wait 3 months. So the test came back about a month ago. It was 0.1 negative. I think a lot of you men and women know that that's a pretty good reading. Doesn't get any better than that. So the doctor said at this point, thank you. He said, I think you're clear. Let's take a PSA test in 6 months and let's do it for the next 2 years. Stay on top of it. Be preemptive. But what he said early in this process was, I think we've caught it early enough. So I want all you men here to realize to take your PSA test is one huge step in catching this early enough. Because the percentage of being able to beat it successfully when you do catch it early is significant. You know, us guys, we're macro managers. Right? We're solving the world's problems. We're bringing bread in for our families, We're too busy. We'll put it off. A year goes by, 2 years goes by. They forget about it. And all of a sudden, you finally take a test and you find out that you've got it and it's spread. We men have to step up. We're using this term now, are you man enough? Just to start taking the PSA test. Women, you find out about breast cancer, you talk about it, you meet about it, you do walks about it, you don't let it get out of your mind, you're reactive, you attack it. But the men in your life, what do? We want to change that mentality now. We want to get all of you men to take your test. It doesn't matter, and by the way, when they say, oh gosh, had prostate cancer, but lived with it and died to be 105. Well, that's nice. One man out of 1,000,
Take it, stay on top of it. These women love you. They want you here for a long time. Let's do it together. In the back, right there.
Yeah, right there.
Carol, yes.
Tell you that when I first started going to baseball games, you were one of the first players that I really liked to watch. I saw you at Wrigley in 84.
How did I break her heart?
How did he break your heart?
Oh,
We have a Cubs fan?
see, as you get older, it's the little things that break people's heart. I hit this
Always one of my favorite players.
until I hit the home run against the Cubs. Yeah.
I remember that like it was yesterday.
Well, it was. Okay, quickly, the Dodgers make me an offer I can refuse in '82. I end up, Ray Kroc convinces me that I should play for the Padres, the great Ray Kroc. We're sitting in his house, hanging over the cliff in La Jolla, and you look Escondido, Ensenada one way and LA the other, and he says, Stevie, you can make a difference here. Call me Stevie. I said, yes, sir, I think I can. He said, I can only pay you in Big Macs and French fries, but all you can eat, son, for the next 6 years. And I looked at him and we laughed. He said, no, you can make a difference. And that's why I ended up in San Diego in my second year. We get to the playoffs. We're playing the Cubs, not the dreaded Yankees, but the Cubs. And they beat us up in Wrigley. We get home, we win the first one, and then I have the greatest game of my postseason career and hit that walk-off home run against Lee Smith, which was just voted the greatest moment in San Diego sports history. And but every day since then, 7,000, 8,000 days, a Cub fan comes up to me and says, how could you do that? How could you beat us like that? And you're an example. Oh, I do. I'm constrained by county lines. Yeah. You get me over the hill on 74, I'm a Padre. I put my hat on, my jersey. I've got a glove. I beat the Cubs. Good question. That man right there. Yes.
Yes.
Just want to say that, I don't know if everybody knows that Jackie Robinson was the greatest all-around ball player in the 20th century. They give it to another gentleman who played, but when he played for UCLA, he was a fourth sport, and he was a phenomenal track athlete, basketball player, football player. They didn't even want him to, he wanted to play in pro football, but they didn't allow him at that time. And baseball, he was the greatest of his time.
Absolutely. That's a great point to make. And he started at Pasadena City College. And then he went to UCLA, played 4 sports. And anyone that saw him at that time will tell you, baseball probably was his 3rd or 4th best sport. The way he ran the football, track and field, basketball, he was a point guard. Baseball, he was a late bloomer. He didn't have time to practice. That's the problem.
He played tennis at Pasadena City College. Could have done anything, right?
Oh, think about that now.
Yeah. And you and I have both had the privilege of meeting Rachel Robinson, who's depicted, I think, really beautiful. I don't know the name of the actress, but she's beautiful. But she captured, I thought she captured what Rachel must have been like when she was younger.
She and Candace knows it, Roxy Campanella were 2 wonderful, dignified black women who, and I say black because obviously we in this case have to delineate a little bit because of what they went through. The way they supported their man and men, the team, treated everybody equally. They were as important as the men who took the field. And if you talk to anybody, Ralph Branker, when I sit down with him, he talks about Roxy and Rachel and what they've done. And is it Monday or Tuesday that's Jackie Robinson?
Monday.
Monday.
Everybody wears 42 on Monday.
Everybody wears 42. Who's the only player that still wears 42 in the majors? Mariano Rivera. That's right, because he had the number when they retired. Another question for us? Yes.